What I'm fascinated most by these days is the other side of success. There's enough books on how to become successful, but most people don't know that the most common feeling after you've sold your business for multiple millions of dollars is depression. Most people have no idea that there are people who have this thought, I have everything I ever wanted in life, and I still don't feel happy.
I just need to accept this and make peace with it and be okay with this. And even then, there's that little girl inside of me that still fully hasn't like grasped this on a somatic level. And that's where my journey is right now, is allowing this to really be absorbed like through my entire system.
It's almost like if the unconsciousness, our subconscious says, if I don't continue these patterns, then I'm invalidating all the generations before me. So we cling on to them unconsciously, even though we know they're costing us. We don't
Mhm.
want to lose that connection with our ancestors.
Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime, so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in. Hello, family, and welcome back to It's Not What You Think. I'm so excited to share the guest that I have today. It's going to be quite a different episode from the ones that you're used to. So today we have with us Rich Litvin. Rich, say hi.
Hi, hi.
And before I have Rich introduce himself, a really special story about how I met him. So back in 2017, I was just starting to open my awareness to the possibility of becoming a coach, and I had one of my absolutely dear friends and original coaches who's been featured in the first few episodes of this podcast, Ralph Ruiz. Just as I was starting to contemplate, could this be the path for me? I was feeling so drawn to the coaching path. He handed me a book called The Prosperous Coach by Rich Litvin. And I was like, okay, what is this? And I remember diving into this book, reading this book. And this was before, the coaching industry was super popular, or there were all these courses or all these how to become a coach or certification courses. I really just didn't even know how to start. And when I read that book, it became clear to me, not just that this was a path that mattered to me, but also how to walk this path, which was even more important. And I actually used that book as the foundation to build and create my business, which 7+ years later is a thriving coaching business that I am in love with. And so I have so much gratitude for this man. And then I had the opportunity also to interview him a few years ago for a Forbes article and learn more about his story and connect with him deeper there. And yeah, so I'm so excited for you to meet him. He's so inspiring and has been a very important influence in my life and career. So without further ado, Rich, would you be able to formally introduce yourself, and then we'll dive in?
Thanks, Celine. Well, I'm a Brit who lives in Los Angeles, and I'm an introvert by nature, which doesn't mean I'm shy, but it does mean that if plans for a party are cancelled, I am secretly relieved. And it turns out this introvert is really good at creating community. And the community I've created over the years is a community of really successful people who are interested in what's on the other side of success. So I'll come back to that in 1 second. I wrote a book 10 years ago, almost just over 10 years ago now, that sold over 110,000 copies by word of mouth. And it's a book called The Prosperous Coach, which is a book about how to build a coaching business, one relationship, one conversation at a time. because I'm a one relationship, one conversation at a time person. And it struck a chord in the coaching industry because it's not about how to do all the systems and SEO and all that stuff that everyone tells you have to do online. It's about a book. It's a book about how to have deep, intimate conversations with people. And if you're a coach, you're a people person. And it seems to have struck a chord all these years later. It still sells about 2,000 copies a month. What I'm fascinated most by these days is the other side of success. There's enough books on how to become successful, but most people don't know that the most common feeling after you've sold your business for multiple millions of dollars is depression. Most people have no idea that there are people who say, have this thought, I have everything I ever wanted in life, and I still don't feel happy. And so I'm interested in what happens on the other side of success. That's what fascinates me. Surrounding myself with really interesting, fascinating people, having interesting conversations and playing with, well, what next? What's in your third act? What are you going to do now? What makes your heart sing? So I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I said, I would love to turn the tables on you. You can interview me if you like, but there's enough interviews of me out there in the world people can find. My gift is coaching. My gift is seeing into your soul. Look, I'll tell you where that comes from. I spent most of my life feeling powerless. You couldn't always tell from the outside because I learned to fake it. I learned to look confident, but I never felt confident. And I learned to look powerful, but I definitely didn't feel powerful. I gave away my power constantly, which means that the gift all these years later is that no matter how powerful the person I'm speaking to, I can find those places where they're lacking in power, where they're pretending they have power, or where they have more power than they know. So I would love to play with you from that place.
Okay, let's play. And so I'm going to hand over the reins to you for the rest of this episode, Rich, which feels very edgy to say, but it's time. So take the reins.
I shall. You relax, let go, and I'm going to let go too of any pressure, because if there's pressure on me to try and create something astounding for people, then I'm not really being present with you. I'm going to trust that we'll get where we need to get to, rather than trying to be performative. When we started speaking earlier, I said, we were like, where should we go today? And I said, you know what? I'm going to pull out, I've got a deck of cards that sit on my desk, spirit cards. It's an oracle deck. And I pulled a card, and the card that came up was Snake Spirit, which is about shedding and transmutation and integration. So from that place of, a snake needs to shed its skin in order to grow. Ooh, this one always hits hard, this question. I didn't know it was going to come in then, but I felt it. What are you tolerating right now?
My body felt that before you asked the question. Hmm. I know what it is, and I don't have the words for it, so I'm going to fumble a little bit as the words come out. I'm still overriding my body when it comes, especially when it comes to work. Oof, yeah, it's hitting me right there.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I say this as I'm currently on my moon, and even yesterday I felt this really deeply because I was on a 20+ hour flight, and I couldn't have planned it, but it was symbolic of just like, oh my God, I just want to be in my cave right now and resting and just recovering my energy body and just needing to deal with the people and the planes and the noise and the lines and I'm like, oh my God, this is so symbolic of what I'm tolerating right now. A lot of noise, a lot of access to me, access that I don't necessarily want to give, and just like energetic clutter and too much stuff on my plate, more than what my body is up for at the moment. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, because I feel it as you're sharing it. I'm 20 years into a coaching career, so coaching is by intuition. A question will sometimes pop in, or something will come. So what comes next to me in this moment? And I had no idea where we were going to go before we started this conversation. We had an idea, and we find out if we get there or not. Um, who modeled that for you most growing up? Was it your mother or your father? There's a lot of access to me. I'm going to override the kind of cyclical nature of life because I have to be always on. There's energetic clutter everywhere. Who modeled that the most?
I mean, what immediately comes up for me is my mother for in very different ways. Maybe not, she didn't model it work wise, but definitely the constant bombardment and toleration of situations that don't fit. Um, yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. Is she still around?
Hmm.
At some point, sometimes it's an interesting conversation to have with our parents when we see a pattern and we realize, oh my God, that's not just me. Like, what was it like for you growing up, mum? Like, hey, I noticed this pattern in you that I saw when you were younger, when I was younger. Uh, Tell me about that. What was it like for your mum? Some of these patterns go back 3 generations, maybe more. And it's a relief to know, like, oh my God, it's not just me. There's something here. There's this legacy, this lineage that I'm carrying.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I've done a lot of ancestral work, and I've spent a lot of time, like, and consciousness tracking into my lineages and my ancestry. So when you said that, I immediately like went into not just my mother, but my grandmother and my great grandmother. And, my grandmother as well is such a, yeah, it's funny. I didn't realize this was going to come through in this moment, but the feeling that comes through is just the amount of responsibility on the shoulders and the burden on the shoulders. And, my grandmother had 11 children. My mom was the oldest woman of that. So she was, the second, I suppose, woman, um, and the second in command in terms of like mothering. And my grandmother, like to this day, like wakes up early every day, goes to the kitchen, makes coffee for like her 11 kids and 20 plus like grandchildren who are coming in and out, like revolving door style, like in and out of her house. There's always people in her house. And then she's also like, you know, has a side business, like creating, what's it called in English? The thing that goes on the bed, comforters. And, and just this like constant, just the feeling is like, boom, everything is on her
Mm,
as a matriarch.
yeah.
And she just like carries so much, like emotionally, logistically.
Mm.
um so yeah, it's definitely a pattern.
Yeah, the word burden feels heavy, and I'm noticing. Well, you don't really use the word burden when you're talking about men.
Say that one more time for the kids in the back.
Burden feels like it's a word that is associated with women's lives more than with men's lives. You don't hear that word
Mm,
often when you're talking about men.
mm, mm-hmm.
There's a heaviness to what the women in all of our lineages have had to carry.
Yeah.
Hmm. Where's your family from?
So my mother is from Brazil,
Hmm.
and my father is from Italy.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's this burden that's been carried by generations of women in your family.
Hmm. Yeah, and I've gone through a few rounds of clearing that these patterns in my own system. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of things have shifted and moved, but there's
Mhm.
still definitely some pieces that are there.
It's hard sometimes to let go of these old patterns because it's almost like if the unconsciousness, our subconscious says, if I don't continue these patterns, then I'm invalidating all the generations before me. So we cling on to them unconsciously, even though we know they're costing us. We don't
Hmm.
want to lose that connection with our ancestors.
Yeah, and the part that's bananas about it is that when even as before the words came out of your mouth, I was like, yeah, there's this loyalty, right? This unconscious
Yeah.
sense of like, yeah, like not wanting to lose that connection, and I know about it,
Mm.
but it hasn't fully dropped into my body to let that go. As in, I've said, yeah, I'm letting it go in my head, and I'm done with that in my head, and like I'm ready to move forward in my head.
Mm.
But I haven't had, that moment where the knowledge drops and you're like, oh, I'm really, truly, authentically letting it go. So that part is still there, even though I'm aware of it. Mm-hmm.
If you trust me, would you be willing to close your eyes right now
Yeah.
and relax into that chair? Let everything else slip away. Just me and you. That's it. Just the two of us. And if we get to the end of this and it was too vulnerable, you can cut this out of the recording so you can let go of any worries about what's going to come out next. Thanks for trusting me. And as you lean back into that chair, you can feel you're held. The chair's literally got your back. Yeah. And begin to scan your body. Notice any areas of tension. Bring some love to them. Yeah, I see you moving a little bit, wriggling a little bit. For anyone who's listening, what part of your body do you feel a tension in right now?
Well, when you said send some love to a part of my body, I immediately went to my womb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And apologized.
Huh. And in this moment, is there a message that comes back from your womb to you? If you listen carefully, sometimes you can hear an answer. Sometimes you can even see or feel an answer.
Mm. So what I'm getting is, I know that you know, and I know that you're doing your best, and I need you to take better care of me.
Hmm.
It's important.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And say thank you in this moment.
Mm.
Thank you to your womb for that wisdom. And bring your attention up from your womb. Maybe place your hand on your belly, a couple of inches beneath your belly button, because there's your womb, but there's also your dantian, your inner wisdom,
Mm.
very close. They may even be connected. And ask in this moment, ask your inner wisdom, what do you need me to know right now?
Mm. Slowing down is safe, and putting it down is not only safe, it's essential to your vitality
Hmm.
and your growth, and also for the children I'm looking to call in one day.
Hmm.
And it feels, yeah, I'm receiving this as like my preparation
Yeah.
and my opening into this new way of being, which in and of itself has a different pathway, and there's things that are looking to come in.
And say thank you to your inner wisdom.
Hmm.
And allow your hand to come up to your heart. And this time ask your heart, what do you need me to know right now?
That love is the way. That love is the only way. And in all that, you do and all that you be, come back to love, and it's going to be okay.
Hmm.
Even if you don't know anything else, if you know that the step is in love, it's going to be okay.
Hmm. And thank you, heart. I've never asked this before, but my intuition is telling me to have you ask your back. If you've been carrying a burden, it's your back or maybe your shoulders. That's where we carry a burden. So check in with your back and your shoulders and ask them, what do you need me to know most right now?
You can be supported, and you don't need to hold all of this. What would it feel like to be held? To allow life to hold you.
Hmm.
And when you let this go, you get to experience a lightness of being.
And notice in this moment how your back and your shoulders feel. Are they tight? Are they loose? Are they lighter? Are they heavier in this moment?
Yeah, I can feel the muscles along my spine are tight. My shoulders don't feel as tight, but yeah, there's like these two. There's like my spine and then the two muscles in the upper back that are like, there's a tightness there.
So put some attention there for a moment. Send some love to those muscles either side of your spine and check in there. Ask your body, what do you most need me to know right now?
Rest is safe.
Hmm.
Please stretch me more. And I get this image of of someone's hands like stretching my back, and this like allow it. Just, when you're you're grabbing your toes, and the yoga teacher will come and just maybe sometimes like put their hands on your back and just help you stretch a bit more.
Yeah.
It's just this image of like, let someone's hands come onto that space and just help you stretch.
Hmm.
I
That
don't
was
have
one of
to
my,
stretch it alone is the
yeah.
message.
I mean, it was so visceral because it was one of my favorite things about yoga class when somebody would do that behind me, put their
Mm.
hands on me and lean into that ever so gently. It felt good when you said it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank your body for its wisdom. And in this moment, I want to ask your mum and grandma are still alive, and even if people haven't passed on, we can sometimes still feel their presence quite close to us. Let me check in. How can you feel the presence of your mum and your grandmother in this moment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can.
yeah. So they've been carrying a heavy burden, as have been the women in your family, all families really, but in your family for generations.
Oof.
Yeah, a yawn is a release of energy, so
Yeah.
let be okay with that. That's energy shifting. Um, they've carried a heavy burden. Hmm. And check in right now with your mum and your grandma, and I'll use my words, but find a way to speak to them. And I don't know when maybe you spoke Portuguese to them. I don't know. But speak to them in a way that they would understand, and ask them or tell them. And again, these are my words. See what you need to say to them. Hey, mum. Hey, grandma. Uh, thank you for keeping me safe. Thank you for carrying that heavy load for so long. And where I'm going next doesn't require carrying the same load. And I'll be safe. I'll be supported. I know I can call on you if I need you. But otherwise, my ask of you right now is that you trust me. I've trusted you for so long. Now it's your turn. Trust me. I know you've got me if I need you. So however you need to say that, whatever needs to be said, check in with them. See what happens.
So what happens is that my grandma's like, "Yep, you've got this." Like full trust, full like I was glad to have done this so that you can walk your path.
Mm,
And from my mom, I get a I don't trust you and take this. You need to take it off of me.
mm,
And so that's like a kind of a like a bit of a I mean,
yeah.
it's not new, it's not news. Um, but even in this moment, I'm still feeling like this, like, not only do you need to carry it, but take some of mine as well
Mm-hmm.
feeling. And I'm like, oh, yeah, my body gets tight.
So let's
Contract.
separate those two conversations for a second. First of all, say thank you to your grandma. Hey, thank you. Thank you for being there for me, and thank you for trusting me. And I know when I need your wisdom, I'll come.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's easier for a grandma to let go, a grandfather to let go because they're two generations away. It's much easier for me to push and stretch my nephews to smile when they fall over. When it's my kids, it's overwhelming.
Hmm.
So, in whichever way feels good right now, again, my words, see what comes to you to say to your mum. Hey, mum, it's okay if you don't trust me. I trust you. You don't need to trust me because I also trust myself. I know you love me. I know you want the best for me. And this is my journey right now. So, whether you trust me or not, I'm going to still be taking risks because you were a risk taker too in your own way. And that's my path now. I've got this. I'm not here to carry your load, but you could put your load down if you wish. That's your decision. That's your path. I'm on mine, and I'm putting down this family burden because I
Hmm.
am on a bigger mission, and I love
Hmm. As you're speaking into this and I'm sharing it, I'm noticing that there's a part of me that feels that I should carry extra because I have the capacity to.
you.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
noticing like there's a very strong part of me that's resonating. And then there's a part of me that's like, "Ugh," because there's like a story attached of, well, if I have all of this capacity and all this prosperity and all this ability, then I should take it off of her.
Well, what if the way to remove her burden is to continue to live in a life of abundance, a life that she's never seen, never really experienced? And you walking your walk is what's going to relieve her burden, not taking off her burden. Because one of the things I've seen when I help people remove their burden is they feel free for a few days and they put a bigger burden back on later
Mm.
because we didn't solve what was really underneath it. What if your path is to live the life that you need? And if she chooses to, she gets to remove her burden, but that's her choice. It's not your obligation.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. There's the attachment. There is that part of me that treats it as an obligation,
Hmm.
and hasn't fully accepted that it's her choice and not my obligation. It's a line that I've previously struggled with a lot. That line between, it's that person, well, she would be the root. It's your choice and not my obligation, because I've made it in many ways my obligation.
Mm-hmm.
And that root has rippled out in many different relationships. It's been a pattern that's been rippled in many places and spaces in my life.
Hmm. An obligation, the word obligation comes from, it means like a binding promise. And yet you didn't come into this world with any promises. We come into this world as this beautiful diamond, fresh, that everyone wants to look at and touch and play with and sing songs to. Every little baby's like that. And then we take on these beliefs from family, culture, society, the media. And what we're talking about, well, what was the card I pulled, right? Snake spirit.
Mm.
What would you need to shed? What beliefs would you need to shed? There are no binding promises here. You didn't come in with any binding promises.
Hmm. What about soul contracts?
Say more.
What about outstanding soul contracts that might have been created in parallel timelines that carried over into this one,
Hmm.
or hasn't been dissolved yet?
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
Um, I'm going to answer that with a story. And if you want to stay with your eyes closed, you want to open your eyes, you choose. Um, yeah, how you feeling?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, my body's leaking all kind of ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tears are okay. Tears are a sign of a release of emotion.
Yep.
Good with tears. So I created a rite of passage for my son. He's just turned 12 and he's gone to middle school. I wanted to create a rite of passage for him. Throughout history, there are rites of passage. I'm Jewish by background, even though I'm not religious. And at 13, you have a bar mitzvah that marks your transition to becoming a man. I asked my kids, the other one's 9, and I said, boys, tell me about what's a rite of passage you know from reading books? And they both said, yeah, going to hunt a lion. That's the one we know from the movies. There always were rites of passage for boys as well as for girls. And so I took him to, a friend of mine has a wolf sanctuary. He has a ranch where they take care of 40 wolves. They use the wolves to help teenagers who are facing challenges and the formerly incarcerated and military veterans. And we had a shaman with us. And we were going to build a sweat lodge. We were going to take my son and two of his friends and their
Mhm.
dads to a sweat lodge. So we spent the morning working. We cleared the land. It was hard work. And we said to the boys, "You're getting ready to be a man. You've got to, there are times in your life you have to work hard." And we sweated in the hot sun in Los Angeles and we cleared the land. And in the afternoon, the shaman guided us. We went down to the riverbank. We took these long reeds, these long branches, saplings rather, and he helped us create an old fashioned sweat lodge. Saplings with cloth over the top, put hot stones in a fire, ran a sweat lodge. Uh, Temperature okay for those boys of that age, but it was still pretty hot. In the evening, as the sun began to set, we said to the boys, "We're taking you up the hill, and you're going to be on a hammock each, spread apart, at least 20 yards apart, under the stars. You have a sleeping bag, and that's it. And we, the fathers, will be down by the fire, and we'll be keeping guard. We'll be watching you all night. Someone will be here. Anytime you wake up, you'll see the fire. We've got you."
Mm.
I'm really proud of my son. Really proud. He worked hard. He sweated. He went to the sweat lodge. We slept out under the stars, and we were there for him. And in the morning, we did a check in with the boys, with the dads. But what moved me the most was that every man in that group, because there was the shaman who was 70 years old, a friend of his who was in his 60s, a couple of men in their 50s, a couple of young guys in their 20s who work at the ranch. Every single man said, with tears in their eyes, almost to a man, "I didn't have this in my life. My dad was absent, was not around." One of them, the man, his dad died when he was 3 years old, never knew his dad. Like, you helped us to heal. You were doing this for your son, but you helped us to heal. And so,
Mm.
you asked about soul contracts. I don't know. Maybe that's outside my pay grade. But what I do know is that when we do the work for ourselves, there's healing that goes on in all sorts of other ways.
Mhm. I like that story. Yeah. And I felt very sad hearing it. Not because of the story, because I think that's an amazing story that you did that, but more so about just felt this like ancient sadness around the importance of initiations and yeah, and this piece around father, son, and then mother, daughter, dad, I feel is missing. Well, it was definitely missing in my life, but I'm like one of many, 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 many people because this is rare. Um, and like this yearning and desire inside of me for that. So I can definitely empathize and feel why this would be healing for even men, not just the kids, but the actual men who got to be part of that. Because I would, yeah, I think many people listening would have loved to receive something like that. Yeah,
And
that path.
as you're talking, what strikes me is that we can heal in this direction moving forward. We can't always do it in that direction going backwards.
Yeah.
It's not your job to heal your mum from her wounds or your grandmother or any of your lineage. That's not your responsibility.
Hmm.
I get to do it for my son. I get to do it for me. In fact, one of the men came up to me afterwards and said, "I'm so impressed with your son, how mature he is. Just you should be really proud of him." And then he said, "It tells me the work that you have done over the years on yourself, seeing who he is." And that made me cry because I've done the work. I've done the work. And I can't heal going backwards. I can't. My dad was on his own path. I was lucky before he died to be able to talk to him about when he wasn't around for us as kids growing up. Um, so I got to have those conversations, but that was his healing work, not mine. I get to do the healing for me and break some of those old family traditions forever.
Mm. Yeah, what you just said really struck me so deep. Like it was just like ding, like a chord that got played just now, like in my womb, as just like the one around. Um, I can't heal my mom's wounds, and that to me, like the chord you just played there, was like is so at the root. of so much, you know. And you know, another thing that came up as you were sharing that is, we talk about, you know, the healer's shadow, the healer's wound, something I've become really aware of as I've been doing the work on myself, and, you know, of course, facilitating this kind of work as well, is where is the work, the space of the light of really being in soul, and being, you know, driven by something bigger than myself, and being in a space of service. And then where's those shadow pieces where, um, that I need to look at. And one of the things that really came up for me strongly a couple of years ago, you just kind of like hit on the residue of that, is around just, I had a moment a couple of years ago where I like had a bit of a crisis, and I looked at myself. I'm like, did I get into coaching just so I can like help other people heal their wounds as a way to compensate for all the ways that I wanted to help my mom? And I realized, like, I had this like, oh my god moment of realizing, like, all the thousands of hours of practitioner training, of certifications, of training to be a facilitator. Not only that, but plus the hours and hours and hours and hours, like part-time job, my own personal development and inner work. And just this moment that's, it's really struck me of, oh geez, like part of me is driven to do this, but of that part of me that's driven to do this, there's a chunk in here of wanting to heal her. And it sounds terrible, like coming out. I'm like, oof, ooh, eek. It's definitely a shadow. And knowing, like, and then trying and trying and trying and trying, and then in that trying, supporting so many people with their own work and their own healing process, but never getting it with her. It's like no needle moving there, and being this like frustration of, why doesn't it work? No matter how spiritually evolved or developed I become, nothing changes. And you know, I'm currently in the stage of my life where I, again, it's that thing, that thinking versus that knowing in the body, you know, with that cognitive understanding of, I just need to accept this and make peace with it
Mm-hmm.
and be okay with this. And even then, there's that little girl inside of me that still fully hasn't like grasped this on a somatic level. And that's where my journey is right now, is allowing this to really be absorbed like through my entire system. But yeah, it's a really big one that I've needed to closely monitor as I'm deepening in my work, really closely monitoring that part of me that's like, there I am, trying to heal again, bring it back, rein it in. That's not my job. But that part is still there.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being real. Um, Look, probably not uncommon with every doctor, nurse, healer, coach. We get more out of it than we give, and that's the interesting part about this kind of profession. But let me just check in. I've got a question for you, and I want to go somewhere. I think. Am I right from what you said earlier? Having kids is on the cards. It's something you would like to have at some point. You'd like to have children.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's the hot button. You can never heal your mum because it's not your work. But if you spend all your time and attention trying to do the healing work that will heal her, you're not going to be able to create the kids and the relationship with the kids that will heal them and have them live healthy lives.
Mm,
Your job is to cut the energetic ties, not the ties, the energetic ties. Those
mm,
energetic ties go back 2, 5, 10, 50, 10,000 generations. Every woman in history was carrying a burden. And you're in a place where you don't have to carry that burden any longer. And you don't want to have it be there for your kids. So
mm,
the reason to let go of this is because A, you can't do it for your money anyway. And B, you keep putting your attention unconsciously and even consciously back in that direction, and you can't do the work that's needed for the kids in this direction. And that's a reason to let go of this. Our kids.
That's the best reason I've heard so far. I haven't, like, I've heard many reasons. I'm like, yeah, okay. But because even when you share this, I had this, it's even beyond for my kids, it's for the future generations. And because even now that my own children haven't materialized yet, but I have friends who, like, I have children that I so deeply care about, my friends' kids, and even I mentioned to you, my friend Ralph just had a child. And so the people that I love so much are having babies, and the extension of me loving them is I'm going to obviously, like, I'm going to love kids because I love them, but I'm going to extra, like, have this feeling of auntie, I don't know, this feeling of they're my family for them. And yeah, and I've known, it's interesting because I know part of my soul's work has to do with children, although I knew it was going to be further down after my own embodied experience with them. But I know that somewhere in my life, in this life, there are contributions that I would love to make to our future generations, whether that looks like, it feels like it's more than just my kids. We'll find out. But when you were saying that, I'm like, I just saw this, like, beautiful prairie of just kids, like, running around in this beautiful green grass and just feeling free and unburdened by the traumas of previous generations, and just feeling free um, and just, like, connected, and just like little psychic empathic children running around being able to fully express their gifts. um, and that, to me, yeah, it feels like something I get to be a part of. And what you're sharing right now, like that choice point, that crossroads of making that choice of, yeah, I don't have this obligation, I get to move forward, is that, yeah.
It strikes me that one of those children running around feeling free is you.
Mm,
And what we're creating is space for you, Celine, to run around and be free.
mm.
So, one of the hardest words in the English language to say out loud is the word no. It's
Is the word
really hard
what?
to say no, N-O,
No.
no.
Mm,
Very hard word to say until you have a yes that's big enough.
mm,
You have a powerful yes, you can say no to anything. There's a concept called the mama bear effect. And the mama bear effect kicks in when a woman has a kid because there are stories of women who've lifted cars off the leg of a child. Women can do astonishing things when they channel the mama bear effect.
mm.
So we're hooking into this right now. And mama bear effect for you right now might not be a bigger mission out in the world. It might be, hey, the biggest mission for me is to take care of me. Your body told you love's the only way. Come back to love. You can be supported. What would it feel like to be held by life? Slowing down is safe. Putting it down is essential to your vitality and growth and for your future children.
Did my body say that?
It did.
Okay.
A lot of wisdom in your body.
That's that's the most credible advice I've gotten then. I'm not saying from you, I'm saying just, I work with a lot of mentors, and my friends are also absolutely brilliant. And so I've heard this many, many times, but it's like when you look at a journal from your past self and you're like, huh, yeah, I said that. So, like, I should definitely listen. Yeah.
Let me check in with you. What's one insight you've had from anything that's happened so far in this conversation?
That I get to, and it's okay to, set myself free from the obligation that I thought I had to carry the burden of my mother and my matriarchal lineage on my shoulders.
So whenever you're ready, take a deep breath in. And place a hand on your belly. On the next in-breath, allow your belly to go out. And hand on your heart too, if you like. Take a deep breath in, feel your belly, feel your chest, right up to the backs of your shoulders. And one more deep breath. This time, feel your belly, feel your chest right up to the backs of your shoulders, and hold that breath inside of you. Hold that breath inside as long as you can, and then whenever you're ready, breathe out with a sigh as long and as loud as you dare. When I coach, I coach for an insight. I don't coach to get a series of steps that someone's going to take next. I'm not an accountability coach, and I know when it's time to take someone off the hot seat, and I think we're there. It strikes me as I look down at my notes that your podcast title is "It's Not What You Think," and there's more than one meaning to that sentence. It's not what you think because it's something else over here, but it's also, it's not what you think, it's what you feel. It's not what you think, it's who you be. And it dawns on me this has been a conversation around feeling and being. And it's sometimes hard to sum that up in words. So I'm going to leave you in this space of being and feeling. And while you'd normally wrap this up with some beautiful insight and summary for the listeners to get, I'm going to leave all of you who are listening too in that place. Or if you've been listening along, I promise you I've been coaching you too. And if I leave you with anything, is the same question I asked Celine before we wrapped. What's your takeaway? What do you get from this? What's your insight? And that's it. It's been a privilege. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for trusting me, Celine. Thank you, those of you who listened all the way to the end, for trusting me too. And we're there.
Thank you. Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning in to today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta, or visiting my website at celinedacosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.